Alrighty, there we go. We're recording.
Excellent.
So we're back again to talk about some entrepreneurs and mental health, this time mindfulness. I'm back with Robin. How are you, Robin?
I'm good. How are you, Jamie?
I'm very good. I've got some nice bright light coming through here, even though it's cloudy. So it's nice to look out into the nice scenery I have.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day, actually.
Yeah, I haven't been out yet. I'm going to the library after, and we'll finally get out of the house.
Good.
And so we have done, so far we did entrepreneurs and mental health, we did entrepreneurs and self-care, and then self-care, correct? Yes.
Yeah.
And now entrepreneurs and mindfulness. So why did you think that mindfulness was an important topic to dig into?
Well, I think it's important. It's a little bit trendy these days,
Yes.
but I think it's trendy for a reason. And I think that reason is because it works. There's a lot of benefits to being mindful and practicing mindfulness, although what I would say is it's not easy to do. So I think it takes a lot of effort and concentration and a lot of consciousness to get good at practicing mindfulness, which is really about being in the present moment, having that awareness and attention to, what's happening in front of you and not thinking about a million things that need to get done in the future or worrying about things that you've already done that have already happened in the past.
So when you say practice, that's something I don't really think about that much with mindfulness, but it makes sense. So how would you tell someone to practice mindfulness?
Well, a good way to get into learning the technique is using meditation.
Okay.
So a lot of people will practice by being still, which is, believe it or not, really difficult for people to do these days.
Yeah.
So being really still, being really quiet, and trying to get your mind quiet and your thoughts slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
So what people typically will try and do is attempt to do that for short periods of time and then extend the period of time that they're able to practice that for, which it's very difficult to describe the feeling, but you're certainly not stressed when you're in a mindful state, which meditation is really the tool I would suggest that gets you there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's being quiet, being still, not allowing your thoughts to go all over the place. And sometimes it's just taking something that's in front of you and focusing purely on that object, or it could be even your breath can help you, and focusing on your breathing can get you into the present moment. Mm-hmm. So anything that really calms the mind.
So if I were to be a beginner with this and I was going to start out, let's say I listen to this and I'm interested and maybe today I want to try it. So when you're talking about sort of increasing the intervals, what do you recommend for people to kind of start with and then work towards?
So starting with a couple minutes. So not setting these big goals, because you can get caught up in, people will sit for an hour in meditation or, so set a realistic goal for yourself and what you believe you could achieve to start, but set them small. And as you continuously build on that, you'll sit a little bit longer. You'll be a little bit more mindful, a little bit longer. So even adding a few minutes at a time, you could do it in 2-minute intervals. If you're feeling that you're getting into that fairly quickly, you can extend that. It's really going to be based on how you feel about it and how much it's working for you. Mm-hmm. And I have noticed for myself and with others that the longer you do it, the longer you're able to maintain a mindful state or a present state of being.
Okay, that makes sense. So for you now, how long do you manage to do your meditation when you do like you're saying, you sit down and let's say do meditation or deep breathing? What's your kind of average time?
I would say about 20 minutes.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not bad. So I dedicate that amount of time. Typically, I do it before I go to bed. Mm-hmm. So I have restful sleep, and I find that I have lots of creative thought as well. When you're very mindful, lots of things sort of come in. Mm-hmm. Now, I would like to increase that, but right now 20 minutes seems to be a good amount of time that I dedicate every day to doing.
Oh no, yeah, that's fine. Like compared to not doing it at all, 20 minutes is actually really great. And I think when we say 20 minutes, it seems like a short amount of time, but for people who have never done this to actually sit down and not really do quote unquote anything for 20 minutes, it actually seems like a long time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm doing 10 minutes in the morning. I'm using a couple of apps. Today I used Headspace and sometimes I use Stop, Breathe, Think.
Okay.
And they're averaging about 8 to 10 minutes. And it's funny how it seems to sometimes go really quick, and you kind of open your eyes back up, and you're like, "Oh, that was kind of quick." And then sometimes it seems to kind of go on a bit more. I think it depends on how settled you are before you get started, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of those apps will take you kind of through a relaxation exercise I've found to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
just to, feel your body and let the tension go and let stress sort of go and thinking about that. And then what I find is you sort of forget about your body and then your mind just becomes very quiet and
Mm.
still.
And so, do you, when you're doing your meditations now, is it guided with anything, or are you just doing it sort of solo on your own?
Now I do it solo on my own. I used to
Okay.
use guided meditations, but what would happen is I'd fall asleep before they
Oh.
were finished, right? So now I just sometimes I'll put on music, sometimes I don't. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I like to get into that quiet space because I also will pay attention to a lot of ideas can come through.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of creativity can happen in those moments of silence as well, where you think, oh, here's an idea, something I never thought of, and likely wouldn't come to mind because when you're in that sort of rat race and busyness, you're
Yeah.
not using that time to sort
Yeah.
of be creative and allow it to sort of flow. So
Yeah.
that's definitely one of the benefits of being quiet and sitting still and, stopping all of the things that are going on for any amount of time, I believe, can be very beneficial. So, and as an entrepreneur, we know it's go, go, go. You got a
Yeah.
million things to do. Your
Yeah.
to-do list never ends,
Yeah.
right? So even taking a few minutes every day, and you actually get quite, I'll even say it's a healthy addiction. So once you start doing it, the idea of not doing it really starts to leave your mind, right? It sort of becomes part of your lifestyle, and it's becomes a part of who you are.
No, that's a good point. I decided I've been going, I went to a conference last week, and I've been in the last couple of years interested more and more in neuroscience. And I went to a session last week on neuroscience, and it was basically talking about how so much of life is habit and routine for us because it just based on the way the brain works. And so she was mentioning to try to build in habits because this conference was for people like me who work in learning and development. And she was saying, we don't necessarily create learning experiences for people as much as we try to create habits. We design habits for people. And in those habits, the learning comes. And so I'm trying to take that approach for me and trying to build the habit of doing the mindfulness or the deep breathing every day. And I decided, like, because I'm like so into my tech, that there's an app that was available the other day for free in the App Store, and it's called you know what? I'm gonna have to check my phone what it's called. But it basically it helps you. It kind of gamifies it for you. And so one of the things that the neuroscience talks about is excuse me, rewards. And so it makes sense with the gamification that if you put on every day that you do the mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
like a green dot on the calendar, and it makes a kind of a success streak on your calendar. You visually see that you have succeeded, and you get kind of this kind of badge kind of thing. So that's your reward, and it triggers your mind to be more motivated to do it again. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm using reminders plus that app. The app has reminders to remind myself every morning, just 10 minutes, just sit, just deep breathe. Don't get stressed about anything. Don't open email yet. Don't check Facebook yet or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's a new thing for me in terms of using it as trying to build a habit. But I can see how you mean the addiction thing. How you reference that makes total sense to me because once you start to feel the benefit, then a day that you miss it, you're like, oh yeah, like I need to totally do this today.
Right. Yes.
because there is like the benefit of reflection, like you said, creative mind ideas come to the top of you, top of mind, because it's not necessary that you've buried them during the day, but you haven't let them come up sort of mentally because you've been so busy with other stuff.
Well, and that's it. And the busyness gets in the way, right?
Mm.
Often, even, people in the workplace who take 10 minutes out can have huge benefits from just taking a break because they're, trying to do a bunch of things as well. And it's so beneficial to just take a break, stop everything that you're doing, and just be.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny how we think that it's like exercise, right? We think that we need to like 8 hours a day be so busy on work and email, but like 10 minutes to just sit there and do nothing. Are you crazy? Like, I'm glad that it's becoming, like you said, a trending thing now in the business world to actually sit and be mindful, because it is so necessary. And 10 minutes is really nothing at the end of the day.
That's right. Yeah. And I find too, it helps a lot with stress.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
If you're feeling stressed or you're feeling anxious, or, and one thing that I noticed too is I was so guilty before of, I could have like 6, 7 emails open at once and responding to different people and texting different people, and not actually taking the time to, read over the email really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Understand what the person is requesting, and I would just quickly shoot back emails to, say, oh, I've responded, and you're not really thinking, and you're just sort of caught up in the busyness of it. And mindfulness has really helped with, okay, open one at a time, read the email, understand what's being asked, and respond to one email at a time, instead of having phone calls going and texts happening and emails happening, all these things at once, and trying to sort of, your belief is that I have to respond very quickly to all these people because we've been conditioned to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without sort of, taking a step back and, breathing and, focusing purely on the present moment and that current email in front of you or text or whatever it may be, right? And then responding. And I think we're just a society that quickly, we're just so fast to respond and not slow down and really think about what we're doing.
And when you're saying like one email at a time, it's important, I think, to remember, and this isn't just based on my opinion, but multitasking doesn't exist. And one of the things that the neuroscientist, well, she's not a neuroscientist, but has studied and has a lynda.com course about it. Her name's Britt Andreetta. She said that she thinks that it should be changed to switch tasking is what the title should be, because she said mentally in your brain, and they've researched this, when you're, for example, on an email and then you open something else up or you're trying to have a conversation, she says your brain actually switch tasks. It doesn't continue with that one thing you were doing like people think that they're doing. It actually stops, puts its focus on another thing for a minute, and then puts its focus back on the other thing, because our brain can only focus on one thing at a time. And so when people say, oh, I multitask as something they put on their resume, I see that and I go, whoa, like that's actually for me not a good thing, because no one can actually do that. It's just it's not possible for our brains to do that. And so I like where you're saying like one at a time and give that thing your focus and then just get it out of the way. And so for me, what I do with email is I put it actually in my calendar that it will be maybe twice a day for about 15 minutes is all I will give to email. And if like I've spent, a bit of time doing this, a couple of years of training people that I am not an automatic responder to anything, text messages, phone calls, email. I actually consciously decided to not be that person who responds right away so that I could train people who know me to never expect that from me.
Right. And you don't lose opportunities because of it.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this sort of preconceived idea that if I don't respond right away and don't get back to this person, especially as an entrepreneur, you might think, oh, the opportunity is going to be gone.
Yeah, and it's not true, because we have to also think, right, when somebody sends you that email at 9 a.m. and says, oh, I'm wondering if you could do that workshop for me at next Saturday at whatever, that then they've gone off to a meeting and something else too, and they won't know that you didn't email them back right away anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
Because everybody's busy. It's not like they're sitting there in front of their laptop like, where's that email? Where's that email?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so funny. Someone has put here on the side, multitasking is a myth. Amen. Preach. I totally agree with that. Unless you're talking about walking and chewing gum, basic motor skills can be done simultaneously, but not tasks that require concentration. 100% true.
Yeah.
And it's backed up by neuroscience. So we can't argue with that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah.
I also find that I've mentioned before that I have ADHD that I'm kind of dealing with. I'm reading a great book about it now, and the mindfulness thing really helps me in terms of just being able to have that bit of better focus on things. And I've learned that because of dealing with ADHD and that I will be distracted so easily, that I've using what's called the Pomodoro technique, where originally it was 20-minute focused work, 10-minute break, 20 minutes, then 10-minute break. But I've kind of done a little bit of a tweak for my own workflow where I do half an hour chunks, and then I'll do about 5 to 7 minute break, and then half an hour chunk of focused work. And it really works for me because I can be more mindful during that half an hour of what I'm working on, because I know that I will get to that other thing in another half an hour or so. And so I used to, like, in the morning, you see your task list and you see all these things, you go, oh my god, what do I do first? And so you kind of start 3 things at once, and a little bit here and a little bit there, and you're not giving good attention and focus to any of those things because we can't multitask. And
Yes.
so now what I've done is I've just split things up, and it's good for the brain, I think, too, to kind of do this kind of switch up too. So for example, this morning, half an hour working on my newsletter. Didn't get it finished in that half an hour, but it's not a problem. My timer went off, and it said I actually put in little suggestions for myself so that I don't have decision fatigue by the end of the day. So it will say water break, for example. So I get up, I go drink water, do a bit of stretching so that we're not not too hunched over our laptop for too long.
Yes.
And then I'll sit back down, and my timer will tell me what the next thing is to do. So then I skipped over to, for example, checking email. And so I like the fact that I'm mentally switching up things every half an hour or so, and then when I go back to the newsletter later to continue with it on another half hour chunk, I look at it differently. I see maybe a mistake that I made the first time around. I see, oh, I forgot to add that thing, and so it's actually working really well for me.
Yeah, and I think too, like, just slowing down. Slowing down can bring a lot of mindfulness, right? Because if you have your to-do list, and I'm so guilty of this, of just you have good intentions, you're ready to start at the top, and then you kind of read down and you go, oh no, I put that up there, but now I'm going to jump to this one, and then you jump back to another one, and then you switch up your list, and then your focus and concentration goes out the window.
Yeah, totally.
Right. So just slowing down makes a huge difference, and, really focusing on one at a time, and not stressing or worrying about what's going to get done. Because at the end of the day, you manage to get it finished.
Yes.
It works. Right?
Yes.
So using your mind to, be present is much more beneficial. You eliminate a lot of stress. You're not jumping all over the place. You slow down, you become present, and you do a better job. And you do things that you wouldn't necessarily have seen before because you're just so busy doing a million things at once.
Yeah.
Which we know is not effective, right?
Apparently, our brains can only take in 20 minutes of information at a time before we are going to start losing focus. And so this is where the Pomodoro kind of idea kind of comes from. I've extended it to 30 minutes because I'm not necessarily absorbing information during that time. I'm creating. But when I am building now things for people for learning experiences, I try to do no more than 20 minutes at a time, where I would, for example, be standing there talking before they are interacting and doing something themselves and engaging. And so I'm being, and I like using the word here again, I'm being mindful of that. Now, I'm not being so busy when I work on things that I don't think of these pieces that I think are important. And I think that's part of being mindful is that, like you're saying, when you slow down and you're focused and being aware of what you're working on, you won't forget those details that you need to incorporate into what you're working on. And I was doing that much more before, where I would just sit down right away, start working on all the stuff. And then a couple of days later, I'm like, oh, I forgot to add that thing, or I forgot to do that thing, because I just wasn't being mindful and paying attention to what was going on right in front of me. And as you said, being present.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see the results of our little social experiment next week when we eliminate the face going on Facebook. Yeah, and I think, you know what, I think there's going to be a lot of mindfulness. I'm expecting actually more mindfulness to be present because I know that I can be very easily distracted. Sometimes I can spend hours on Facebook and then a lot of things don't get done, right? And so being mindful and having that almost removed, I could see really raising your attention, awareness, and focus because that distraction is now eliminated. Now, I'm not saying I love Facebook. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think it'll be a really interesting experiment to see in terms of mindfulness and even self-care.
Yeah. We forget that Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, all of these things are designed with psychologists and brain scientists at the table. Like they are addictive and et cetera on purpose, and they're made that way because they want us to spend more time in the app. So when you struggle with being distracted and spending an hour on Facebook, it's kind of not necessarily your fault. They've designed it to trigger your brain that way, so you do stay on it. So to be able to take a break from it is going to be very interesting. I'm going to find the event link so that anybody who's on today can join us if they want to.
Yeah, that would be great. I see somebody posted this or aware of something. Yeah.
Now, one other question I wanted to ask you that I forgot a little while back there was when you mentioned that you do 20 minutes at night, and I was saying I do 10 minutes in the morning. To try to be mindful during the whole day, what do you suggest in terms of not just having it at that one piece of time that you've set aside, but that you're mindful like during the whole day?
Well, I actually believe the practice of mindfulness, that 20 minutes, does help during the day. So it actually sort of transfers over. I certainly can tell when I don't do it if I skip it.
Okay. So what does that look like when you can tell?
Well, I'm typically more stressed out.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I can be more stressed. I can be in that rush. I tend to forget to sort of slow down and really be in the present moment. I can default back to that very, very quickly if I'm not doing it. And I do notice it right away. So when for me, it's the same as yoga. If yoga brings mindfulness, it's another sort of exercise that helps with mindfulness. And if I don't do it, I know my body notices, my mind notices, right? Because again, that's another exercise that gets you sort of back into the present moment, slows everything down, right? Everything feels better. You feel healthier overall. And that's why I think it's a healthy addiction. This is a really good addiction to have.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So certainly I think, and the more that you do it, because when I first started it, I wasn't doing it every single day. I do it kind of here and there as I thought about it. But now I think the mindfulness aspect of actually doing it has raised that awareness that, yes, Robin, you need to do this every day or else you'll feel like this, right? So I'm pretty consciously aware of that if I'm not practicing.
That's like I was the same. I was kind of haphazard in that, and I do notice when it's not around in my life too. I think stress does go up. Sleep's not the same. Work, like the projects I work on don't turn out the same, or it takes me longer to do them. And an interesting one thing that I also heard last week in this presentation, which just was like amazing, is I think it was with PTSD, people who are suffering with PTSD, they tried mindfulness with them just once. Like they tried meditation with them. I think it was for a 10-minute period, just like that, just that one time. They'd never done it before. They did 10 minutes and then they measured with MRI, et cetera, their brains. And there was a permanent change in the brain just from that 10 minutes.
Wow.
Which just like is incredible. Yeah. It's that powerful.
Yeah. And I mean, even when I talk about mindfulness with people, it's like, don't take my word for it. Try it.
Yeah.
Totally. Don't listen to me. Like if you try it and it works for you, then, I actually personally haven't heard of anybody who hasn't experienced benefits from doing it.
Yeah, same here.
Right?
Hey, Chuck, where are you calling from?
Northern California.
Oh, nice. Lucky you.
Yeah, we got a pretty chilly morning here on the Sacramento River. I'm about 130 miles north of Sacramento.
I'm sure it's not as cold as it is up here. We still have snow on the ground.
Well, I'm surrounded by snow, but we don't have any here. So,
Oh,
but
okay.
but no, very interesting topic, and it's interesting. We talk about focused, and the two of you have done a wonderful job. What I'm finding is blab is absolutely killing my life, and ruining my mindfulness. I was writing, and of course, like a fool, I subscribe to the little blurb up at top. And when I see those, my curiosity drags me back to blab. So I've had to change my whole lifestyle in the last couple of months.
Oh wow!
But
well, one thing that I do check if it helps you is I've turned off almost any notification that exists on the planet.
Well, when I'm deep in the creative process and having to finish a task, I do that. But on a day like today, I'm communicating with people around the world right now, and it's kind of a lazy hang back kind of day. I dressed up a few posts, and we publish a newspaper in Wisconsin every Wednesday, and then I put a digital version of it out, and I'm just finishing some of those articles posted today. So it's not a pressing issue. But yes, when we're in the depths of creativity and have to projects, everything gets turned off, including the telephone.
Oh, good.
I don't use a cell phone very often, so I just unplug the house phone. And of course, people who are important enough know that they can leave a message. So, and that's worked very well for the last, pushing 60 years in the business world, and we get things done. I'm not a fan of meetings. I'm not a fan of having a meeting to have a meeting. Meetings should last no more than 10 or 15 minutes. And if it can't be stated in that period of time, you got to fire the CEO because they must have gone to Harvard. I don't know. See, mindful. This is really the problem in the business community today, and it's a subject. I believe it's a product of our educational system in the last 40 years.
Oh, interesting.
I just listened in on a blab, and they were focusing on something that, take this test to find out who you are. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't really give a squat what anybody else thinks who I am. The only person that's of concern to me is me. Mm. I was taught that by my parents, all of my grammar school teachers, all of my high school teachers, and all of my college professors. Mm-hmm. Because without me, I have nothing to give. And that's what I was put on earth for, is to give, share, and produce. Mm-hmm. So again, I don't need to have somebody tell me I'm red, blue, or green. Of what difference does it make? Mm. Now, if I'm not happy with myself, that's my job to handle that situation. Mm-hmm. And of course, I've been blessed with great mastermind alliances over the last 30, 40 years. And that's what we do, spend time, because as we get older and as we go through different growth spurts in businesses, our thought processes, our underlying thought doesn't change, but how we get there does. The internet has been a terrible distraction for a lot of us, although 10, 12, 13, 20 years ago, most of us assimilated it and have used it very effectively to grow the businesses with a much higher return on investment, because it is. I mean, I can spend $1,000 on the internet and have a return much greater than television, radio, and the news media. So again, but it's another distraction, isn't it, Jamie? And now your name isn't Mega Health, I'm sure.
It's Robin.
Robin, yes. So the mindfulness I love, because I like to read about old people because I've always been old. I don't know if any of you have studied the way Abraham Lincoln worked. But Abraham Lincoln would have a task. He only limited himself to 1 or 2 tasks a day, which I assumed that posture years ago. Mm. And he absolutely, if you walked in the room, he would not even recognize you. and you would wait until he was completed with that task. So obviously his staff learned that, and they wouldn't even go near him. Maybe Abe was like myself, slow-minded. We work through a process, but he accomplished a lot. And you mentioned the Pomodoro method. I think that's a good thing to follow. I like the fact that you've expanded it. You might even try an hour, instead of just 30 minutes. So anyway,
I agree. Sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead.
I agree with like the Abraham Lincoln thing. It was what I was thinking earlier too in terms of tasks. Is I try to have maybe 3, maybe 4 at the most tasks that have to be done that day. And instead of, because I used to do like a list of 10 things and then I would get so overwhelmed. And now I'm just like, what are the 2 or 3 things I have to get done today to keep continually like growing my business, the things that make money, for example. And so that's really helped me be mindful of my focus in terms of if for example, if going on LinkedIn today is not going to help me get my course done that I want to sell, then I will avoid LinkedIn today. So I'm really trying now to just have like 2 or 3 main things that day that I have to get done by about, 12, 1 o'clock. And then I feel actually really accomplished. And then in the afternoon, if I decide that I want to just go for a walk or go hang out with friends, I don't have that beat yourself up sort of feeling anymore because I actually got some really important things done in the morning. And so I'm much more mindful of that now, that I don't let myself distract away to something that's not going to be that focus of those 2 to 3 things I need to get done.
That's just phenomenal that you actually put the time frame, because everybody, you meet people in your life, and everybody wanted to know why I started growing things at a young age and farmed for years, and I still grow things on a smaller scale. But almost all of the major tasks, which weren't that many, were usually completed by noon. And the conception of the farmer, don't misunderstand me. We didn't ignore. The job got done, but we started very early in the morning. Now, what happens, and you, again, I just want to intensify what you said, to be able to kneel down at the end of the day and say, thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to get those things done. We feel good about ourselves. I pity the people who go to bed with the onus that they haven't got anything done. So if we simplify our lives into smaller segments, eat that elephant one bite at a time. Those elephants, I don't know how many elephants I've eaten in my life, but it's been quite a few. And other people, the elephant's still walking around, and so again, I just love the direction this conversation has gone between the two of you. I do have to get off this blab. And it's in California, it's 9:30, and of course we're going to travel over. In fact, we're going to go across the river, and not through the snow, but over the hill to my sister-in-law's to meet with the extended family for Thanksgiving. So I do have 1 or 2 small items to complete, and I really appreciate the opportunity for allowing me to come in. I'd like to leave you with one little thing. For several years, our companies have always sent out Thanksgiving cards, not Christmas cards, for 2 reasons. Number one, we truly are thanking our customers, loyal customers, for giving of themselves by making the decision to use our services and purchase our products. And I've always used the word thanks for giving. And I just sent somebody, I thank you for giving to me the opportunity to know you. So instead of Thanksgiving as one word, I think there's an impact in the word thanks for giving.
Yeah, interesting. That's a great idea.
I just thought I'd leave that with you. And thank you all very much. And enjoy the day.
And have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers, Chuck. Yeah, that's so interesting. I hadn't heard that expression for a while, where you take a bite of the elephant,
Yeah,
a little bit at a time until you're done your big goal. And I think what happens is we start working on the elephant, and then we see like the tiger, and we go after that, and then we see the antelope, and we go after that, and then nothing gets finished,
that's
right?
right.
So it's so
Yeah.
interesting how he put that, but it totally makes sense. I hadn't heard that for a while.
Yeah, but I also think that's a lot of it comes from conditioning, right?
Yes.
Like we've really been conditioned to not slow down,
Yeah.
keep your to-do list has to be enormous. And if it's not, then, what's going on that
Yeah.
you don't have a million things to do. So we've really been conditioned. So what do you do for yourself? And this is a great exercise in mindfulness that really helps you essentially at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that's been helping me lately is so I've learned about decision fatigue. So we can only make so many decisions in a day, and then our brain is spent.
Yes.
And then so I'm coupling that with the fact that these days we can automate a lot, and we've briefly touched on this before. And so what I've decided to try to do is create the habits and the routines based around using some of the technology, so that some of these things are just automatic or automated for me. And then
Yeah.
I don't have as much on my brain to kind of worry or think about, because I know that in the background, these things are just happening by using certain apps, etc. And one of the things that I'm really, really trying to do, and I read another article again about it last night, how if you plan uh, for the next day, instead of planning the next day the morning you wake up, apparently it actually subconsciously kind of works in your brain overnight while you're sleeping, those things that you've already planned out. So you're more apt to get them done and be focused on them in the morning. But the other thing is too, you go to bed a little bit more, a little calmer, because you know that you've already planned out the next day, and you're not laying down going, okay, what do I got to do tomorrow? I can't forget this, can't forget that, got to do this, got to do that. And so now I'm trying really hard to put those three priorities in the little scheduling app that I use that marks out those time blocks for me. I try to do it night before, and then when I wake up in the morning, all I need to do now is I push play on this app, and it starts the routine for me. And I'll do the 30 minutes, for example, and then my phone will tell me what's next, and then I do the break, and then I come back and it tells me what's next. And I don't have to make those decisions anymore. I just follow along what the app is telling me, and then I get to noon and I'm like, oh my God, I got a lot of stuff done. This is amazing. And
Yes.
I didn't have to sit there and struggle and
Yeah.
try to remember what comes next. It just does it for me. And then
And
those kind of extras and those things that you might need to not that maybe did come to you during the morning that you don't expect, I just deal with them in the afternoon, because people can wait. And if they can't wait, then I don't want to work with them anyway.
yeah, it's one of those things that you start to notice the more you practice. Like, our minds can really take over.
Mm-hmm.
They can tell you, if I don't get all this stuff done, like I'm a failure and I'm not moving forward, and all of this negative self-talk. And that's why I think mindfulness is really an antidote to things like negative self-talk. Those things start to subside quite a bit the more you move towards, present moment, mindfulness techniques. So it's interesting to see what happens the more you do this practice in your life, and the things that you kind of look back and you go, well, I can't believe I stressed out about all of this stuff before.
Yeah.
There was really no need to. Is just these thoughts that were coming to your mind, that because we have overactive minds that are constantly thinking a million things at once, can actually contribute to the stress, right? And feeling anxious and all of that kind of stuff. So
You had mentioned, I think was it the last blab? I can't remember, but I'm really curious if you could maybe talk about it again and explain a bit more. You mentioned mindfulness in an approach to eating. I've done mindfulness eating before, walking. You said something about brushing your teeth. You gave a couple of examples that are kind of unexpected, I think, for people. Do you mind maybe saying how you incorporated mindfulness, or you suggested to other people to kind of in these other day-to-day things?
Well, part of that practice is looking at all of the regular sort of practical things that you do every single day, but approaching them with presence, and how you can generate sort of increase the amount of presence and awareness or attention that you have in that moment is doing things differently. So we become creatures of habit, and then your mind you just go on automatic, right? And you're not really thinking about what you're doing anymore. It's like driving. People go into this trance state almost, and they forget, they don't even realize how they got from A to B because it's so habitual.
Yeah.
So how to practice or how to increase mindfulness and being present is to look at, if you're doing the dishes or brushing your teeth or combing your hair or whatever it is, you're doing it in a totally different way. And if you approach things like that are very simple and decide, I'm not going to do this the same way that I do it every single day, I'm going to do it differently, you're actually contributing and raising your awareness.
Okay, interesting. So
you have to think about it. You have to approach it differently, right? So your attention then is fully on what you're doing. And now I'm going to do it different. So now, my attention has shifted because I'm not just on autopilot. It's a very simple thing to do that actually part of that as well is you got to pay attention to doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the awareness comes with the awareness around doing it, right?
Yeah, and that would make sense, I guess, in terms of just being more aware of what you're doing during the day. That totally makes sense. Like, it's totally connecting for me now. So if I were to be a bit more mindful of just a simple thing like brushing my teeth, and then I don't have hair to comb, but like when I comb my beard, for example, then I would hopefully this pattern and this habit would become more part of the other things that I do. Like, for example, sitting and having a conversation with somebody that maybe turns maybe a little bit difficult and heated and emotional. If I've been practicing mindfulness and being aware of how I'm feeling, how my body's feeling, etc., just in brushing my teeth, then I'm more apt to be aware of how I'm feeling and what's going on in certain situations that are more important.
Yes.
So that makes total sense. I remember when I did the mindfulness eating at a retreat that I went to, and sorry, my bird is so excited about our conversation apparently today. But mindfulness eating, I remember we ate slowly. We took small bites. We thought about who made the food, who provided the food, where did it come from, being thankful that we even had it. What were the taste sensations? How did it feel in our mouth? Where did it go from? Like, did it go from one side to the next? What were our teeth doing, our jaw? And it was just such an interesting exercise in being present of what you were doing in the moment, as opposed to eating and thinking, okay, I have to do this. Oh my God, I have to do this after I finish eating. And then you're like shoveling it in, which is not really the best way to eat, and just not enjoying that food.
Exactly. Have you ever been really mindful and had like a really good cup of coffee or a tea or whatever? And you just, it's like comforting. You're enjoying it. You slow down. You're really tasting the flavors. And then you actually say to yourself sometimes, like, dang, this is good.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're kind of going, wow, I'm really, really enjoying this drink. Right?
Yep.
But that is really an indication that you're being very present with just purely enjoying the drink that's in front of you and not having all those other things that are going on, your to-do list and all the rest, right? All of that stuff is out of your peripheral, right?
That's such a good idea. I find I'm always the last person done at meals.
Yeah.
Because I've just decided to slow it down and actually taste it, as opposed to thinking of it as just fuel. I mean, when I go to a really nice restaurant and my friends wolf it down, I'm so frustrated. I'm like, did you even taste that? Did you even notice that there was cardamom in there, for example?
Yeah, actually, another interesting technique with food is to, when you're tasting something, if you're trying something new, or it doesn't have to be, it can be something else that you're just eating, is trying to pick out the flavors.
Oh, yeah.
Some people are really good at that. It's really interesting to watch, right?
Yeah.
When people can taste it, oh, it's this spice or that spice. But that, again, is a really mindful technique to having you just focus on what's in front of you and what you're doing, right?
Very good point. There's a question here. Does mindfulness mean becoming conscious of the smallest thing associated with what we are doing?
I think there's an awareness and attention that happens with mindfulness. If you call it consciousness, I mean, some people refer to it as consciousness, but for me, it's awareness and attention to what's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that it necessarily means the smallest thing necessarily. Would you say? I don't think it needs to be the smallest thing.
no.
But becoming conscious of what we're doing is a very important piece there for sure. Like you said, we can get in a car, just be an autopilot, and not even realize how we got home.
Yeah,
which can be so dangerous.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But you're not present.
I honestly think that's why a lot of accidents happen, is because people are just not being mindful while they're driving and realizing that they are in a car and that there are other people around them, and that they have to just be aware of what's going on. And I know I've had that sometimes where, let's say on because like in Ontario where we live, these like the 401, etc. They're such long stretches of highway that sometimes can just be very straight and flat. And sometimes I get thinking about something else, what I got to do tomorrow or whatever. And then I realize that I'm much farther down the highway than I was like a few minutes before, but I don't realize how I got there. And that really freaks me out sometimes. And then I just kind of go, okay, I'm in a car, got hands on the wheel. I should be driving here and paying more attention.
Yeah, I think we've all done that.
Yeah.
I think we've all done that. Yeah. Yeah. Very easy to do, because when you get into a habit, you lose the awareness around it because you're just on auto, right? You're just doing as you normally would. There's no real thought going into it. There's no attention necessarily. It's just,
I think that's one of the reasons I like what my driving teacher taught me years ago when I was 16, is to always be checking the different mirrors. So rear view, then left side mirror, then right side mirror, then looking straight ahead, then looking maybe to my left. And he built that habit into me as a driver. And I find what it does is it keeps me always mindful of what's going on, because I'm not just like, I see people who drive and they just look straight ahead the whole time. And you can always tell those people when you come up behind them on the passing lane and they don't even realize you're behind them. And I'm like, that person is not checking their rearview mirror ever, And I'm always in the habit of looking around just because I think it's safer, and you become a better defensive driver when you're aware. But it also keeps me mindful that, yes, I'm in a car and I'm doing this and here I am. And so I keep doing that, is where sometimes I'll have left hand, right hand. I'll look at this mirror, then that mirror, and that mirror. And it just keeps me mindful of the fact that I'm in a car.
Yeah, that's great advice, actually, because that's what that people can just.
It totally works for me. Yeah, it totally works for me.
Good.
I'm not sure if he was like mindful kind of guy back then, but he was more telling us that piece just to be defensive, as a good defensive driver. But I find it really works to keep me aware of the fact that I'm in a car driving.
Yeah, and I think, it says a lot when you come into contact with people who know these tools and talk about it and provide sort of some of these things, because I think it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
It seems the uptake to it seems to be increasing all the time,
which is awesome.
Again, that's why I say don't take my word for it. Try and do it and see what it does for you. And there's lots of apps and all kinds of things that can be used to help you, right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Any last words for anyone listening?
Just be present. And, if you haven't tried mindful tools or techniques, give it a whirl. See how it works for you. I think we'd love to hear from anybody who's, attempts to get into the mindful techniques and hear what the benefits are for them, because it's always interesting dialogue.
Yep.
When you're, you hear back from people and how their life has changed, I think is always an interesting dialogue too. So
very true.
Yeah.
So and everybody, I'm sure, who knows Blab sees that our Twitter handles are there. So share your mindfulness practice or experiences anytime. I also, and Robin also, share articles, tips, like apps, like we've been talking about on our Twitter feeds as well, to help people become more mindful. So make sure you connect with us after the fact. Now, there's one comment here on the side. I don't want to miss it before we end. Women's Summit, not sure the name behind the account, says, I find staying aware of my breath helps with any task and keeps me in the moment. One tends to breathe shallow when you are not paying attention. So easy to disconnect from the body when you are doing and thinking many things. Breath brings me back into my body and into the present moment. Oh, totally true.
Yeah.
I love that. I am trying as hard as I can these days to be more aware of when my breath is shallow and up in my chest. And when I do my deep breathing and mindfulness, I'm not sure if this would help anybody listening, but I sometimes like put my hand on my stomach so that I feel the breath from there as opposed to up here. And it does make a difference because sometimes you're not so aware of where the breathing is happening. So I actually do put my hand on my stomach to make sure that it's moving out and in with my belly.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing about that is too, the more you do it, the more natural it becomes.
Yes, that's true.
Right? And so the more you do these things, the less you have to sort of put attention to it because it will automatically occur for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to put up for people too who maybe joined in recently. Here's the Facebook event Robin and I are hosting next week. We found there was an article published about 2 weeks ago in a psychology journal. There's a Danish study where they took people off Facebook for a week, and they saw that just in that 7 days off Facebook, everybody's happiness index increased. And so we're calling it the Happiness Project because we're anticipating with 7 days without Facebook that at the end we'll feel happier. So if you want to join, it's an open event there. There's the link, and it would be great to see your reflections after. We're planning a blab after the fact for people to share how it was. Because I'm a little bit like, okay, how am I going to do this without for a week? And there are some people who are already commenting on that because they do use it to connect to family and see what's going on. And so it's just, but it's only 7 days. It's not gonna kill us. So if you want to join, the link is there, and it'll be a lot of fun. So feel free.
Yeah, excellent. I'm looking forward to that.
So again, another hour went by really quick.
Good.
And a lot of great stuff. I love that Chuck got in there and talked about some things related to Abraham Lincoln, et cetera, and then eating the elephant bit by bit. That was great.
Yeah.
So as always, this is recorded. I'll be sharing it after the fact so people can check it out. And as I mentioned at the beginning, if people didn't hear, we were going to have this as an audio file as well for people who just want to listen. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie.
Thank you, too. Remember to breathe and be mindful for the rest of the day.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.